Oh, we would be interviewing a defender of
A
scammer fraud.
scammer fraud
Well, no,
defender?
I'm not.
Get out of here.
I'm not a defend I just wanted to talk about it for a second because I think it's like I've been thinking about it. I mean, I think it's like they're both bad. He's worse,
Mhm.
obviously, because he's
Yes.
making it a show trial, but he's also using what you also learn from the Heidi Fleiss trial, which is that like people will turn on a woman who's like trying to get some stuff in the world real hard, and be like, how dare she fucking use her beauty and wiles to, like, put one over on old Captain Jack Sparrow.
I wanna turn the like, you mentioned, Charlie Sheen, of course, being involved in this, and the fact that, at, like, the height of his celebrity, he was dating, like, like, the most well-known, like, porn stars of the time, and I'm just wondering, is in, like, another part of this story, like, the weird sort of bifurcated entertainment industries that exist in Southern California between Hollywood and, like, movies and pornography. And,
Yeah,
like, the
absolutely.
and the weird way in which they are, like, totally, like, on the surface, hermetically sealed from one another, but, like, in
No, it's the
reality,
same
like, have
thing. I
this
mean,
huge crossover, like.
I'm from the Valley. I'm from North Hollywood, the cradle of the pornography industry. And I wrote a big story when I was at Grantland a long time ago about the Adult Video News Awards, and then I went to the XBiz Awards pretty recently, or not the awards, the XBiz conference, which is just the business conference, which I love. And I was on a panel about sex work in the media kind of in advance of this, being like, yeah, people hate sex workers because they're like, how dare a woman be hot and like get money for it on some basic level. But when I went to the porn awards, my idea of going was to kind of make a point of like, it's actually more progressive than mainstream Hollywood in like a million ways at this point because there's no money in porn anymore. And when there's no money in an industry, they let women and minorities take over because they're like, well, there's no, the DVD boom is over. So like everybody in porn directs because there's no barrier of entry. All the porn stars become directors and producers, and they all move up in the porn industry, and it's, like, very female dominated at this point. So I was kinda like, "Yeah, look, when women are in charge of, like, selling sex, like, they know how to do it, and they know where the boundaries are of what's work and what's not," like,
Yeah.
there was a crazy story about Chloe Cherry, the porn star coming on Euphoria, because she's on Euphoria this past season, and that, like, they asked her to take her clothes off right away, and she was like, I haven't even signed anything yet." Like, in porn, when I take my clothes off, it's because it's, like, in the script. Like, people just have this insane idea about, like, sex worker, just, like, that they're on all the time, and it's like, no, they're on at their jobs, and then they're not, you know? And so, yeah, I think it's like there's so much people in mainstream Hollywood would just like they were buying sex for the entire history of Hollywood, and this kind of exposed that in a way that they were like, "Uh-oh," because especially it was the '90s and it was the end of the '80s and everybody was trying to clean up and get off coke and rebrand as like progressive, which kind of feels similar to now where they're like, that's not what Hollywood's like. It's cool
Uh
now."
I want to get into like some of her like post like her post trial career and life, but could you just like just tell us briefly like like what went down with her like arrest and the trial itself, like how did that shake out and what happened to her?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I brought up the Amber Heard thing too is it's just like this is when Court TV started, so it was the first time there was ever a 24-hour content cycle for anything, which obviously is like everything now. And just the way that people could get addicted to watching a trial feed and the way people had this trial and the OJ trial on just like in public spaces all the time, they were just, like, both it was such a big deal and this kind of, like, I don't know, this weird parasocial involvement in people's lives where, again, it's like, maybe it's that thing of taking the collective away back to the individual that we were talking about, where it's like, "Let's just punish this one person, and then, the city is cleansed." And, yeah, they busted her. Her parents were also because they were hippies, they didn't think her doing sex work was necessarily bad, you know? They were very like, "We just want our daughter to be happy." Her dad got in trouble because he co-signed a loan on her mansion, and, again, that's like a thing probably a lot of rich parents do, and he was just like, "Okay, I'm just trying to help my daughter," but her whole family, like, sided with her. They were like, "We don't understand why the LAPD is doing this," you know? And, she, like, cracked a joke at them when they arrested her where she was like, this is why the city has no money, is because you spent it all on this raid, shit like this. And that's just like, she's right. It's like in LA now, that's stuff like this constantly happens where it's just like, why do you spend money on harassing and fucking up homeless people just a million times instead of spending that money on building housing, Just things that, like, are basic logic, we've tried this a million times. It just seems like LA, it's like the cycle is always repeating, because nobody ever wants to stop and learn anything from what's happening.
But like it's like the trial was a public spectacle. It was like it was a media circus. I mean, eclipsed by the O.J. Simpson trial, obviously. But I mean, she was convicted and did time for this
Yeah, she was
eventually.
convicted, she did time, she had to go to a drug rehab, and then when she got out, it was the 2000s, and she, made a new career
How
as
long did she do in prison?
she did, I think, 3 years. I think she was supposed to do 6 years, and she only did 3. But it was also, like, the process of the trials and the retrials and stuff took so long that it's just, like, I think she was just a really broken person by the time she got out, It's like
Okay, the thread I want to pick up from like her post incarceration and then like sort of reintroduction to celebrity culture in America is that she went on celebrity rehab, correct?
okay, so that's who should be in jail is fucking
Okay,
Dr.
yes, all right.
Drew.
Okay,
Oh my god.
Molly, I want to thank you so much because like this is I, Dr. Drew Pinsky, in my opinion, is one of the most unheralded villains in
He's
American
such a
culture.
villain, and
And
also
like, I'm sorry, like he personally has killed more drug addicts than Duterte in the
I could
Philippines.
not believe okay, so Celebrity Rehab, I'd never watched it. It's still on VH1.com for the time being, although I think VH1 is going down, so get it while you can if you wanna be so depressed, the most depressed you've ever felt. Um, it's so dark, it's so fucked up. And Dr. Drew's right there being like, "This is good," because I mean, also Dr. Drew's like an LA radio guy. I'm also, like, interested in all these LA radio guys who then became, like now they're all, like, podcasters, Like, Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew did the show Loveline that was, like, the relationship call-in show.
That's how I learned about sex.
They give the worst advice, but I also found out recently every call was staged.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but I was like, "Well, that makes sense."
But also,
My
like, I mean, in addition to like how unethical it is to do drug treatment for your patients on a fucking TV show, trading on their celebrity, like Dr. Drew is a genuine quack and like a
He's a
dangerous one,
super
especially when it
quack.
comes to like fucking issues of addiction.
He's a super quack, and he does the craziest thing on so the craziest thing about Heidi's season of Celebrity so Heidi goes on fucking reality television, which is then what notorious people do in the 2000s. It's like a way to make money. It kinda makes sense for her. And also, there's a whole episode coming up about how her cousin, Mike Fleiss, invented The Bachelor. And is another just, like, incredible, insane hustler. He's, like, a huge dirtbag. He's kinda funny. But she goes in celebrity rehab, and Dr. Drew, the worst fucking doctor in the world, decides to surprise bring on her abusive ex-boyfriend,
Oh
Tom
my god.
Sizemore,
Oh my
without
god.
telling her. And Tom Sizemore is, played by your very own Felix on Heidi World. So
So yes, while you brought it up, and I think like one of the interesting things about your podcast is like this element of casting, and that there is a cast of dozens of people that you have selected to essentially voice the like the first person like primary documents of the people involved in the case, including our own Felix Biederman as legendary actor and patron of sex workers, Tom Sizemore. Could you just talk about Tom Sizemore's relationship with Heidi Fleiss? And what made you cat? What about Felix made you cat? Because to me, the Felix is the juice when it comes to Sizemore.
yeah, I just
I
thought it would be funny. I thought the heat is the action.
Yep.
I thought Felix would be funny as Tom Sizemore. It made me laugh thinking about it. I did a lot
I
of
was cast because I'm the opposite of him in the stuff that he does.
I mean, I did cast a lot of really nice boys as, like, the worst men on earth, which I also thought was funny to do.
So like yeah, so Tom Sizemore and Heidi Fleiss dated, and like Sizemore is a famously like unstable, abusive drug addict and lunatic.
I mean, if you get a chance to watch Celebrity Rehab, it's also crazy because it's like so they surprise her with her abusive ex-boyfriend at the rehab. Also, it's like she's not the most fucked up person at the rehab by any means, 'cause,
Yeah,
some
Gary
other
Busey was on that show.
Yeah, Mackenzie Phillips is on it with her, and Mackenzie Phillips's stories are so crazy because she, like, started having sex with her dad right after that. It's just, like, she makes Heidi be like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" Like, "What the fuck?" Like, Heidi 'cause she's telling all these stories about how her dad is John Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas, yeah, like, would, like, make her get drugs for him, and Heidi's like, "Oh my god, like, I would never do drugs with my dad." So again, it's like a spectrum of parenting. Like, Heidi's parents were strict compared to Mackenzie Phillips's parents, you know? But yeah, they surprise her with Tom Sizemore, and what is crazy, it's one of the most affecting things I've ever seen is that when she first sees Tom Sizemore, she's not mad. She looks at him with, like, unbelievable love, and they look at each other with, like it's, like, very weirdly romantic. They look at each other and they're like, "Oh my god. Oh my god, you're here." And they just, like, stare into each other's eyes and, like, hold each other and are like, "I love you," and it's crazy, and then, like, 3 days later, she turns on him and gives this speech at their final, like, rehab graduation where she's like, "Thank you, Tom Sizemore, for making me realize I'm a lesbian." It's like
Ooh.
Owned.
it's but it's like it's also you're like, "This is real, like, you shouldn't be watching this, like, this is these 2" and it is, like, electric, and I can't believe they should never have put any of this on
Uh,
television.
no, but seriously though, like look up how many of Dr. Drew's celebrity rehab patients have died shortly thereafter being
Somebody
on his
died
fucking
from
rehab program.
Someone died from this season, and Heidi does a thing, which is that she, like, won't do the group rehab, she just kinda, like, crawls off into a room to dry out, and then they're, like, give her shit for not, like, making drama, you know, and she's like, "Look, I'm withdrawing from meth, like, fuck you guys. I'm just gonna be in this room." And somebody else has, like, a seizure and falls off the bed. It's fucking I just, like yeah, I have this episode coming up about 2000s reality TV that was a real treat to revisit the post 9/11 reality TV landscape of just fucking absolute ethical horror.
If- that era of like the 2000s in VH1 was
Oh my
truly
god.
like the
Oh,
nadir
yeah.
of
Well,
humanity. Like,
Mike Fleiss, who I'll get to, like, Mike Fleiss started The Bachelor, but the thing he did before that was Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire, which was a huge
hell
scam, it turned because
yes.
the guy wasn't really a millionaire. But before that, he was doing shit like world's greatest car crashes, like world's most violent police chases. Like, I don't know if you remember the era of
Oh,
like people
yeah,
just
I
selling
absolutely
this,
remember.
Girls Gone Wild just being an infomercial where it's like basically, he was trying to sell like snuff films and stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, once again, speaking about the cops, like, remember that show World's Wildest Police Chases? Like, the
Oh
fact that
yeah.
everyone like this was an entertaining show that people watched and came away with it, be like, boy, I'm glad the cops pursue everyone who flees in a car at
Yeah,
110
that makes
miles an
sense.
hour,
Even
like
though
putting
cops
everyone else's lives at risk. Like,
I love that,
oh my god,
there's I
you
think
have
there's an
fucking
Eric
helicopters. You don't need to chase a car with another car if you have a
that
helicopter.
that Eric Andre bit about the theme song for Cops being like like a reggae song. It's
God, I can't stop thinking about that Miami jewel thief where these jewel thieves hijack a UPS truck and the cops
Oh
show up
god, yeah.
and just start blasting while hiding behind occupied cars on the freeway, using people driving down the road as human shields to just unload into the UPS truck and absolutely light up the hostage and kill him.
it's a
And then
video
UPS
game.
apologized to the cops and told them what a good job they did.
I forgot about that.
I
That
totally
was
forgot about that
insane.
too, but that was
I just think
fucking
it's like this is a larger question, but like, is there anything that will make people take to the streets again? Like, what the fuck are we doing here? I feel like
I
there's a
mean,
Kent State like every 3 days.
the thing is, I really don't think you can separate what happened in the summer of 2020 from the reality of COVID and reality of people being really like quarantined for like extended period of times, millions of people. It was like fucking the champagne bottle got shook up too much. That then once that happens, people are just like exploding outward. But now, what's going to get people bottled up enough? You
Well, that's what
know?
I'm saying also, it's like if all the attention like, it did feel a little bit like the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial was a psyop, but also in
Yeah.
that same way, like a referendum